Equals my name is Evelyn, and I have spent the past 2 years meticulously planning my revenge. It all started when I uncovered the ultimate betrayal by the one person I trusted the most, my husband. It was a cold, dreary evening in New York City as I sat in my dimly lit living room, the sound of rain tapping against the window creating a soothing backdrop to my swirling thoughts. I couldn't believe what I had discovered earlier that day when I stumbled upon those incriminating emails on his laptop. My heart pounded in my chest as I read through the messages, each word like a dagger to my soul. The betrayal was both shocking and devastating. How could he do this to me after all the years we had spent together, building a life filled with love and trust? But there it was, plain as day, the evidence of his infidelity staring me in the face. I felt a surge of anger and bitterness wash over me, fueling a fire of determination to make him pay for what he had done. As I sat there in the darkness, my mind began to race with thoughts of revenge. I knew I couldn't let him get away with this, couldn't let him think he could just betray me and walk away unscathed. No, I would make sure he paid dearly for his actions, that he would never forget the pain and humiliation he had caused me. With steely resolve, I got up from the couch and made my way to our bedroom where he lay sleeping, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. I stood over him, watching his peaceful expression as he dreamt, completely unaware of the storm brewing in his own life. I reached out and gently shook him awake, my voice cold and filled with a quiet rage. "Wake up, James," I said, my eyes burning with intensity. He stirred, blinking groggily at me before realization slowly dawned on his face. "What's wrong, Evelyn?" he asked, his voice thick with sleep. But I could see the flicker of guilt in his eyes, the knowledge of his betrayal lurking just beneath the surface. "You know damn well what's wrong," I hissed, feeling a surge of anger bubbling up inside me. "I found your emails, James. I know about her." His eyes widened in fear and shock as he realized he had been caught. The guilt on his face was palpable, a stark contrast to the lies and deceit he had been feeding me all this time. I watched as the color drained from his face, his hands trembling as he tried to form a response. "Evelyn, I can explain," he began, but I cut him off with a bitter laugh. "Don't bother," I spat, my voice filled with venom. "I don't want to hear your pathetic excuses. You've betrayed me in the worst possible way, James, and now you're going to pay for it." I could see the fear in his eyes as he realized the gravity of the situation. He knew he had crossed a line that could not be undone, that he had opened a door he could never close again. And as I stood there, towering over him in the dim light of our bedroom, I knew that this was only the beginning of my revenge. My plan was already in motion, and there was no turning back. Now I watched as the flames danced in the fireplace, casting flickering shadows across the dimly lit room. The crackling sound of the burning logs filled the silence, a stark contrast to the turmoil raging inside me. The memory of that fateful night haunted me, a constant reminder of the betrayal that had shattered my world. As I sat there, lost in my thoughts, a knock on the door pulled me back to reality. I hesitated for a moment, wondering who could be visiting me at this late hour. With a deep breath, I got up from the armchair and made my way to the entrance, my heart pounding in my chest. When I opened the door, I was greeted by a tall figure shrouded in darkness. As the person stepped into the light, I recognized him instantly, Michael, the man who had once been my closest friend. His face was a mask of concern, but I could see the guilt lurking in his eyes. "Evelyn, can we talk?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I felt a surge of anger rise within me, but I pushed it down, masking my emotions with a cold smile. "Of course, Michael, come in," I said, gesturing for him to follow me into the living room. We settled down on opposite sides of the fireplace, the warmth of the flames casting a glow on Michael's face. For a moment we sat in silence, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. Finally Michael spoke, his voice hesitant. "I know I messed up, Evelyn. I never meant to hurt you. Can you forgive me?" His words cut through me like a knife, reopening old wounds that had never truly healed. I clenched my fists, fighting to keep my composure. "Forgive you, after what you did?" I hissed, my voice laced with venom. Michael flinched, a look of pain crossing his features. "I was desperate, Evelyn. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I see now that I was wrong, and I'm so sorry." I scoffed, unable to contain my rage any longer. Sorry doesn't bring back what you took from me, Michael. Sorry doesn't erase the betrayal, the lies, the deceit." Tears welled up in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I had shed enough tears over him, wasted enough emotion on someone who had proven unworthy of my trust. "You have no idea what you've done to me," I continued, my voice trembling with suppressed emotion. "You destroyed everything I held dear, everything I believed in. And now you have the audacity to come here and ask for forgiveness." Michael hung his head, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, Evelyn, but I had to try. I had to make things right somehow." I shook my head in disbelief, the anger coursing through me like a wildfire. "Make things right? How could you ever make things right, Michael? You can't undo the pain you caused, the damage you inflicted. You can't bring back what's lost." Silence descended upon us once more, the crackling of the fire the only sound in the room. I could see the guilt weighing heavily on Michael's shoulders, the regret etched into every line of his face. But it was too little, too late. With a heavy heart, I stood up, my gaze fixed on Michael. "I think it's time for you to leave, Michael. There's nothing left to say." He nodded, his eyes filled with remorse. "I understand, Evelyn. I'll go, but please know that I truly am sorry." As he made his way to the door, I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. The confrontation had drained me of every ounce of energy, leaving me feeling hollow and empty. But as I watched Michael disappear into the night, a fire ignited within me. A fire fueled by anger, by betrayal, by the desire for revenge, and I knew in that moment that this was only the beginning. The beginning of a long and twisted journey towards retribution. As I walked through the bustling streets of New York City, the weight of my plan hung heavy on my shoulders. The thrill of revenge was intoxicating, but it was also a dangerous game I was playing. I could feel the eyes of strangers on me as I made my way to the address Joe had given me, a seedy warehouse in the heart of the city. The entrance was covered in graffiti, the metal door rusty and creaking as I pushed it open. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of cigarettes and stale beer. The room was dimly lit, the only source of light coming from a single bare bulb hanging precariously from the ceiling. I spotted Joe in the corner, his back to me as he talked quietly to a burly man with a scar running down his cheek. I approached them slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. Joe turned to me, a sly grin on his face. "Ah, Evelyn, I see you made it, ready to play your part." I nodded, trying to ignore the unease churning in my stomach. This was a dangerous game I was playing, but I was in too deep to turn back now. I had to see this through to the end. The burly man turned to me, his eyes sizing me up. "You got the money?" I nodded, reaching into my bag and pulling out a thick envelope. I handed it to him, trying not to flinch as his rough fingers brushed against mine. He quickly counted the bills, a satisfied grin spreading across his face. "Good, follow me," he grunted, leading us deeper into the warehouse. We passed rows of crates and boxes, the sound of muffled voices echoing through the dimly lit corridors. Finally, we reached a small room at the back of the warehouse. The burly man pushed open the door, revealing a scene straight out of a nightmare. The room was filled with cages, each one holding a frightened, trembling figure. Men, women, even children, their eyes wide with fear as they looked up at us. I felt a wave of nausea washing over me, my hands shaking as I tried to keep my composure. This was what I had been fighting against, the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of the city I called home. And now, I was willingly stepping into the belly of the beast. Joe stepped forward, a look of satisfaction on his face. "This is it, Evelyn, this is where your revenge begins." I took a deep breath, trying to push down the rising tide of fear and revulsion. I couldn't show weakness now, not when I was so close to achieving my goal. I straightened my back, steeling myself for what was to come. The burly man opened one of the cages, dragging out a young woman with tears streaming down her face. She looked at me with pleading eyes, a silent plea for help that cut me to the core. I clenched my fists, feeling the anger bubbling up inside me. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment when I would finally take a stand against the evil that had haunted me for so long. I stepped forward, my voice steady despite the turmoil raging inside me. "Let her go." The burly man laughed, a cruel sound that sent a shiver down my spine. "What are you gonna do about it, sweetheart? You think you can take on all of us?" I didn't hesitate. I lunged forward, my fists flying as I unleashed years of pent-up rage and frustration. The burly man stumbled back, taken aback by my sudden attack. Joe stepped back, a look of surprise on his face as he watched me fight back. I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment when I would finally make a difference. I fought with all my strength, my heart pounding in my chest as I took on the darkness that had consumed me for so long. The room erupted into chaos as the other captives joined the fight, their desperation lending them a strength they never knew they had. The burly man and his goons were outnumbered, their cruel laughter turning to panicked shouts as they tried to regain control. I saw my chance and seized it. I grabbed the young woman's hand, pulling her towards the open door. Together we ran through the maze of corridors, the sound of shouting and fighting echoing behind us. We burst out into the cool night air, gasping for breath as we sprinted through the alleyways and narrow streets. I knew we were safe, at least for now. But the fight was far from over. I turned to the young woman, her eyes filled with gratitude and confusion. "I'm Evelyn, I'm here to help you," she nodded, tears streaming down her face. Thank you for saving me." I smiled, a sense of satisfaction washing over me. This was just the beginning. The darkness that had plagued my city for so long was finally starting to crumble, thanks to the actions of one woman who refused to give in to fear. As we disappeared into the night, I knew that my revenge was far from over. But with each step I took, I felt a newfound sense of purpose and determination. And I knew that no matter what obstacles lay ahead, I would face them head-on. Armed with the strength of those who had found their voice and refused to be silent any longer, I stood at the edge of the dimly lit alleyway, watching as the rain poured down in sheets, soaking through my clothes and seeping into my skin. The sound of thunder rumbled in the distance, adding to the ominous atmosphere that surrounded me. In my hand, I clutched the loaded gun, its weight a comfort as I steeled myself for what was to come. I had been planning this moment for months now, ever since I had discovered the truth about what had happened to my family. The betrayal had cut deep, leaving a wound that festered with each passing day. But now, as I stood in the shadows, I felt a sense of calm settle over me. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment when I would finally have my revenge. I heard footsteps approaching, echoing off the wet pavement. I gripped the gun tighter, my heart pounding in my chest. And then he emerged from the darkness. It was him, the man who had orchestrated the downfall of my family, the man who had thought he could get away with it all. He stopped in his tracks when he saw me, his eyes widening in shock. "Evelyn," he stammered, his voice shaking. "What are you doing here?" I didn't answer. Instead, I raised the gun and took aim. I could see the fear in his eyes now, the realization dawning on him that his past sins had finally caught up to him. You think you can just walk away from all of this, I said, my voice cold and steady. You think you can destroy my family and not face the consequences? He tried to speak, to plead for his life, but I didn't give him the chance. I pulled the trigger, the sound of the gunshot echoing through the alleyway. His body crumpled to the ground, blood staining the rain-soaked pavement. And as I stood there watching the life drain from his eyes, I felt a sense of satisfaction wash over me. This was justice. But as I turned to leave, a voice called out from the shadows. Evelyn, I froze, my heart leaping into my throat. I knew that voice. It was a voice I had heard many times before, a voice that haunted my dreams. I turned slowly, my hand tightening on the gun, and there she was, standing before me with a look of determination in her eyes. It was her, the woman who had been my downfall, the woman who had torn my family apart. Sarah, I spat, the name bitter on my tongue. What do you want? She took a step closer, her eyes never leaving mine. I want to talk, she said, her voice soft but filled with a steely resolve. I want to explain. I laughed, a harsh sound that rang out in the silence of the alley. Explain? What is there to explain, Sarah? You betrayed me, you destroyed everything I had. She shook her head, her expression pained. I know I made a mistake, Evelyn. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I had my reasons. Please, just hear me out. I hesitated, the gun still clutched in my hand. Part of me wanted to pull the trigger, to rid myself of the woman who had caused me so much pain. But another part of me, a part that had been buried deep beneath the anger and the hatred, wanted to know the truth, wanted to understand why she had done what she had done. Fine, I said finally, lowering the gun ever so slightly. Talk, and so she did. She told me about the deal she had made, the secrets she had been keeping, the lies she had told. And as she spoke, I felt a knot forming in my stomach. It was a tangled web of deception and betrayal, one that had ensnared us all in its grasp. When she was done, I stood there in stunned silence, the gun slipping from my fingers. I don't know what to say, I murmured, my voice barely a whisper. Sarah took a step closer, her hand reaching out to touch mine. I made a mistake, Evelyn, I know that, and I can never make it right, but I can try to atone for what I've done. Please let me try. I looked into her eyes, searching for any sign of deceit. But all I saw was regret and sorrow, pain etched deep into her features, and in that moment I made a decision. I couldn't undo the past, couldn't erase the pain and the suffering that had been inflicted upon me, but I could choose how to move forward. I could choose forgiveness. I reached out and took Sarah's hand, the rain still falling around us. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive you, Sarah, but I'm willing to try. And as we stood there, two women bound by tragedy and regret, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. It was a long road ahead, filled with forgiveness and redemption. But for the first time in a long time, I felt hope stirring within me. The rain continued to fall, a cleansing rain that washed away the sins of the past. And as we walked out of the alleyway together, hand in hand, I knew that this was just the beginning of my journey towards healing. The end of a chapter, but the start of a new story. As I stood in the bustling streets of New York City, I could feel a sense of unease settling over me. The time had come for me to face my past and confront the man who had wronged me so many years ago. Evelyn, a woman of 45 years with a heart filled with determination and a mind fueled by revenge, was ready to seek redemption and reflection. I had spent weeks meticulously planning my revenge, every detail carefully thought out to ensure that I would finally get the closure I deserved. The man who had shattered my world and left me broken was about to face the consequences of his actions. I made my way to the abandoned warehouse where our paths were destined to cross once again. The dilapidated building stood as a stark reminder of the darkness that had consumed my life for so long. As I entered, my heart raced with anticipation and fear of what was to come. Hello, Evelyn, a voice echoed through the empty space, sending chills down my spine. There he stood, the man who had haunted my dreams for years, his cold eyes piercing through me. Michael, I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil raging inside me. It's time for you to pay for what you did to me. Michael smirked, his arrogance oozing from every pore. And what exactly do you plan to do, Evelyn? You think you can take me down after all these years? I took a step closer to him, my eyes narrowing in determination. I've spent years planning this moment, Michael. You may have thought you could destroy me, but I refuse to be a victim any longer. As the tension between us grew, I could feel the weight of my past bearing down on me. The memories of the pain and suffering I had endured at his hands flooded back, fueling the fire burning inside me. You were nothing but a pawn in my game, Evelyn. You were disposable, Michael sneered, his words provoking a deep-seated rage within me. No more games, Michael. It's time for you to face the consequences of your actions, I said, my voice filled with conviction. With a swift motion, I pulled out the gun I had concealed in my jacket, pointing it directly at Michael. His eyes widened in shock, realizing that this time he was the one being hunted. You think you can just come here and threaten me, Evelyn? You don't have the guts to pull that trigger, Michael spat, his bravado faltering in the face of my resolve. But I was no longer the frightened woman he had once preyed upon. I was a force to be reckoned with, a woman seeking justice for the years of torment he had inflicted upon me. As my finger tightened on the trigger, a flood of emotions washed over me. Anger, fear, and a sense of liberation all mingled together in a tumultuous storm raging inside me. But amidst the chaos, one feeling rose above the rest: satisfaction. With a steady hand, I fired the gun, the sound reverberating through the empty warehouse. The bullet found its mark, striking Michael squarely in the chest. As he fell to the ground, a look of disbelief etched on his face. I knew that I had finally achieved the redemption I had been seeking. As I stood over his lifeless body, a sense of calm washed over me. The weight of the past was lifted from my shoulders, replaced by a newfound sense of freedom and empowerment. I had faced my demons and emerged victorious, reclaiming the life that had been stolen from me so long ago. As I left the abandoned warehouse behind me, the sun setting over the city skyline, I knew that this chapter of my life had come to a close. But as I looked towards the future, I felt a sense of hope and renewal. Knowing that I had finally found the redemption and reflection I had been searching for, I could feel the tension in the air as I entered the dimly lit room, the smell of old books and leather filling my nostrils. The mahogany walls seemed to close in on me, suffocating me with their weight. This was the place where secrets were kept, where truths were hidden, and where revenge was born. Sitting behind a massive oak desk was the man I had been searching for all these years. His cold, calculating eyes met mine, a smirk playing on his lips. He knew what I was after, and he was not going to make it easy for me. "Ah, Evelyn, so nice of you to finally join us," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "I must say, I didn't think you had it in you to come this far." I clenched my fists, trying to keep my composure. I had waited too long for this moment to let him get under my skin now. "Here for what's mine," I replied, my voice steady and strong. "You can't hide from the truth forever, Jonathan. It's time to face the consequences of your actions." Jonathan chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "And what do you plan to do, Evelyn? Are you going to kill me like you did to my brother? Or are you just here to gloat about your victory?" His words cut through me like a knife, reminding me of the pain and loss that had brought me to this point, but I refused to let him see my weakness. I was here for justice, for closure, and nothing was going to stand in my way. "I didn't come here for revenge, Jonathan," I said, my voice low and controlled. "I came here for the truth, and I will not leave until I have it." With a flick of his wrist, Jonathan summoned his guards, who surrounded me with their menacing presence. But I stood my ground, unflinching in the face of danger. I had come too far to be intimidated now. "You think you can just waltz in here and demand answers, Evelyn?" Jonathan sneered. "You have no idea what you're getting yourself into." But I was done playing games. I had spent years preparing for this moment, gathering evidence, building my case, and now it was time to see it through to the end. "I know exactly what I'm getting myself into, Jonathan," I said, my voice steady and unwavering. "And I will not rest until I have the answers I seek." With a nod from Jonathan, his guards advanced towards me, their eyes filled with malice and greed. But I was not afraid. I had faced worse than them in my quest for the truth, and I was not about to back down now. As the first guard lunged towards me, I ducked and rolled, dodging his attack with practiced ease. I could hear Jonathan cursing behind me, his anger fueling his every move. But I was focused, determined, and nothing was going to stop me now. With a swift kick, I disarmed the guard, sending his weapon clattering to the ground. I could see the fear in his eyes as he realized that I was not to be trifled with. But I had no time for mercy. I had a mission to complete, and I would not be deterred. As the other guards closed in on me, I lashed out with precision and skill, taking them down one by one. Their cries of pain echoed through the room, but I paid them no mind. I had come too far to be stopped now. Finally, only Jonathan remained, his face a mask of fury and disbelief, but I had no sympathy for him. He had brought this upon himself, and now he would have to face the consequences of his actions. "You think you can just come in here and take what's mine?" Jonathan spat, his voice full of rage. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, Evelyn. I will make you pay for your insolence." But I was beyond his threats now. I had seen through his lies, uncovered his deceit, and now it was time for him to face the music. "I know exactly what I'm dealing with, Jonathan," I said, my voice cold and unforgiving. "And now it's time for you to pay for your crimes." With a swift motion, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the evidence I had gathered over the years. Photographs, documents, recordings, everything I needed to prove his guilt and bring him to justice. As Jonathan's eyes widened in shock, I laid the evidence out on the desk before him, each piece a damning indictment of his crimes. I could see the color draining from his face as he realized that his secrets were no longer safe. "You see, Jonathan," I said, my voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "The truth has a way of coming out, no matter how hard you try to hide it. And now you will have to answer for everything you've done." Jonathan's hands shook as he reached for the evidence, his eyes darting back and forth as he tried to come up with a defense. But there was no escaping the truth now. I had him cornered, exposed, and there was nothing he could do to stop me. As he scanned through the documents, his face twisted in a mixture of anger and despair. He knew that his time was up, that there was no way out of this mess he had created. Evelyn," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You've destroyed everything I've worked for, everything I've built, but know this, I will never forgive you for what you've done." I looked him straight in the eye, my gaze unwavering and cold. "I don't need your forgiveness, Jonathan. All I need is the truth, and now that I have it, I can finally move on." With that, I turned and walked out of the room, leaving Jonathan to face the consequences of his actions. I could hear his cries of despair echoing behind me, but I paid them no mind. I had accomplished what I had set out to do, and nothing could take that away from me. As I stepped out into the cool night air, a sense of peace washed over me. The weight that had been bearing down on my shoulders for so long was finally lifted, and I knew that I could finally move on with my life. The legacy of truth had been revealed, and I had emerged victorious. And as I walked away into the darkness, I knew that I would never look back. I had found closure, justice, and the satisfaction of knowing that I had done what needed to be done. And with that, my story of revenge came to an end, leaving behind a legacy of truth that would echo through the ages. I walked into the dimly lit room, the smell of stale cigarettes and cheap whiskey hanging heavy in the air. The sound of a ticking clock echoed in the silence, a constant reminder of the time slipping away. As I surveyed the room, my eyes landed on the figure sitting in the far corner, bathed in shadow. "Hello, Evelyn," a voice called out, the tone cold and mocking. I clenched my fists, feeling the anger bubbling inside me like a volcano ready to erupt. "Martin," I spat out his name like a curse. "I should have known you'd be behind all of this." He chuckled darkly, his silhouette moving closer to the light. Martin was a man in his late 50s with salt and pepper hair and eyes as black as night. He had been a thorn in my side for too long, always one step ahead, always outwitting me. "It was all too easy, my dear," Martin taunted, a smug grin playing on his lips. "You were so blinded by your thirst for revenge that you never saw the bigger picture." I could feel my blood boiling, my hands trembling with rage. How could I have been so naive? Martin had manipulated me, played me like a pawn in his twisted game. But now it was my turn to take control. "You think you've won, Martin," I hissed, stepping closer to him. "You may have taken everything from me, but you will never break my spirit." "Oh, but I already have, my dear," Martin whispered, his eyes gleaming with malice. "You see, revenge is a dangerous game. It consumes you from the inside out until there's nothing left but emptiness." I shook my head, refusing to believe his words. I had come too far, fought too hard to let him defeat me now. "Enough of your mind games, Martin," I growled, my voice steady and strong. "It's time to finish this once and for all." With a swift motion, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the gun, the cold metal comforting in my hands. Martin's eyes widened in shock, realizing too late that he had underestimated me. "You think you can just waltz in here and kill me, Evelyn?" he spat, a hint of fear creeping into his voice. I raised the gun, aiming it straight at his chest. The power I felt in that moment was intoxicating, a newfound sense of control over my own destiny. "You took everything from me, Martin," I said, my voice unwavering. "Now it's time for you to pay the price." Before he could react, I pulled the trigger, the deafening sound of the gunshot echoing through the room. Martin's body slumped to the floor, his eyes wide with shock and disbelief. I stood there, breathing heavily, the weight of my actions settling in my chest. As I watched the life drain from Martin's eyes, a sense of satisfaction washed over me. I had finally avenged the ones I had lost, the ones Martin had taken from me. It was a bittersweet victory, but one that I knew was necessary for my own survival. And as I walked out of the room, leaving behind the chaos and destruction I had wrought, I knew that I was finally free. Free from the chains of my past, free from the torment of revenge. I had found peace at last in a world beyond retribution.